can't say Dr. Mo ain't tell ya that fear magnifies the consequences of failure. What are you scared of? Why are you afraid? I'd rather live like I'm dying than live to die. Any day, my heart is pure, my soul is safe.
Welcome, Darrion. So happy to have you on the program.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Fantastic. It seems you have a big heart for helping others. Tell me about your background.
So my background began in Pleasant Grove, Texas. Pleasant Grove is what some would consider one of the biggest areas in Dallas. I grew up, my mom had me at 17. She was in her senior year of high school at Spruce High School, well, one of the greatest high schools in America.
Shout out to Spruce.
So she was in her senior year. So a lot of my time early on grew up with my grandmother and my grandfather and my mom. So kind of have a little old soul. That's what some would say, because I started off early with my grandparents, but didn't have much. I would say that. But the support wouldn't have said that. It was dinners that turned into spreads.
Yeah.
And they still have that to the day, excuse me,
right.
That niche of being able to bring people together at the dinner table, and that turns into spreads. And it's just from there, my heart was just really trained by the love that I experienced from my family and the support that I experienced from them just throughout my life. They were at the games. They were the loudest at my sporting events. They were the loudest at the graduations. But then they were also the loudest when I needed the redirection. And so they also kept me, no matter how high I went, they also kept me grounded.
Kept you humble. Thank God for families that do that. That's important. So then your education, you went to, I think you played ball, you went to college, you did it all.
Yeah, so I had an opportunity. So again, I went through the Pleasant Grove feeder pattern. And so I went to W.A. Blair, E.B. Comstock, H. Grady Spruce. And then from there, I had the opportunity to go play quarterback at Langston University, historical Black college in Oklahoma. Got my bachelor's degree in psychology and a minor in business management. From there, I took a couple years off, and then I was able to go back to school and finish up a master's and complete a master's in social work.
Oh, that's fantastic. Justification for higher education right here, folks. Kudos to you. You took a track that many people have taken, but they don't always end up at the finish line in a position that you have.
Yeah, I mean, I almost didn't finish myself, but
you did it. It's not even the position; it's the obstacles that you've overcome that we should be measuring. But we have a tendency to want to look at where people are. But if you were given 100-yard head start, that's not really comparing apples to oranges. Right. So that background, the family, the community, relationships, education is perfect for community engagement and advocacy. But before you got into the nonprofit arena, you were a juvenile probation officer. What was that experience like?
So the experience, literally the only way I had that opportunity, I feel like it was a true God experience. I was that kid that graduated college, felt like, oh yeah, I have a degree, so I'm getting a job tomorrow, right? Didn't happen. So 3 months into being back at home in Pleasant Grove at my mom's house, I needed a job. And a lady at my church, Sister Lawhorn, she gave me the opportunity to come on with Dallas County and work with the juvenile department. And it was by far the greatest and hardest experience, and for a number of reasons. One, the main specific reason to me is I got to build relationships with boys, young men, that the community were throwing away because of particular behaviors that they had committed, their track record. But when you these kids, these young men, they were no different than my family. They were no different than people that I knew as I was growing up, who just needed a friend, who needed an opportunity to just vent and actually talk through some of their thought processes and their I guess behaviors, and actually have someone encourage and let them know that they're supporting them. So that was just an amazing experience. I got to see some of the most extreme cases while I was working with Dallas. I got a chance to work some of the most high profile zip codes as a probation officer. And I also got the chance to see true behavior shifts happen in young people and how lives can be changed and when people have true second chances.
Oh, that's beautiful. Absolutely. Anyone's life and so many people of privilege get second, third, fourth, and fifth chances, yet don't want to offer that to someone who's been incarcerated or, a juvenile offender. So, and I'm sure I can imagine that the young men, you probably shared your story like you're doing now. They looked at you and saw a vision of what they could be, of what could happen in their lives that wasn't negative or ending up in the prison pipeline. So did any of them ever comment like that, ever give you feedback about how you had motivated them or inspired them?
Yeah. So, the Lord put it on my heart, and this happened right before I left. I had about five young men who were either going into their senior year or they were approaching graduation. And I noticed that the through line was that none of them had suits. And so one of the things long story short, I was able to partner with a friend, and we took the young men to K&G.
I know it well.
So you have a big budget, but hey, we took it, we used what we have. We talked to the leadership there at K&G off Westmoreland and I think it's like Camp Wisdom and
yes. Big one right there.
Yeah. So we took them over there, and when the young men walked in, there was a man waiting on each and every one of them.
Oh, wow.
And so we were able to put the young men in suits, like from head to toe. I mean, suit, shoes, shirt, tie. I mean, and it turned into competition for us. So we were like, who's going to have the best dressed young man,
Oh, my.
So it was we had fun with it. But that, I literally, gosh, I haven't thought about this in a while. One of the young men, actually a couple, I had one young man who, Hispanic kid, all he wore was big baggy clothes. No one ever expected this kid to put on a suit. Kid wore a suit to court. Kid walked in the courtroom, and the judge saw the kid and how well dressed he was. And just because of that, you can tell that the child's behavior had changed. Child's mindset had shifted.
Wow.
It was released from probation. And then there was another much more serious case. And mind you, I had no clue that these kids were wearing their suits to court. They wore them to court. And another young man he was actually dealing, unfortunately, with a sexual case that he could be registered as an offender for the rest of his life. And that was the decision. That kid, the suit went a long way in helping that kid not get registered for the rest of his life. So he just had a second chance, and the suit event served for them. And I've been pumping gas, and kids have came up next to me that I was like, that they're grown men now. They're saying, "Oh, Mr. Lewis, man, I hadn't seen you in a few years, man. Like, it's so good to see you. I got a family now. Look, it's just in this line of work that we do when the advocacy with serving people, it's not immediate gratification that you get often. It's typically when the kids age. And
you're planting seeds.
You're planting seeds, and they come back to you later and say, "Thank you for what you said." And a lot of times you don't even remember what you said. It's like
I feel you on that. I know what you said.
Yeah, so it's all good.
That's amazing. I've had people, I'm a words person. I'm an author, and I'm big about writing people notes, shooting them emails, trying to encourage them. And I've had mentees or my little sister when I was in Big Sisters in Minneapolis, but additionally, just people I just reached out to with a note or email or whatever. And this happened recently. A woman had an email I sent her 20 years ago. She still had it. And she reached out to me on LinkedIn to tell me how much that had impacted her. I had no idea. All I wanted to do was encourage her for the moment. But so I feel you and yours very largely on generations because you're working with future fathers, and leaders in the community. And I hear so many lessons in what you're saying. I want to go back and say, people think about networking in terms of passing out business cards and shaking hands, but because you were involved in your church, because you had made a good impression on the people at your church, someone at your church was willing to help you get a job. Right. That's networking. That is networking. We want to view it through certain prisms. And then there you are working with youth, being an example, not knowing, 10, 20 years later, someone's going to see you pumping gas in your car and come back and say,
who knows, right?
Struggling with my allergy. You changed my life. You changed the direction of my life. Wow. What a great feeling. So now you're president of Behind Every Door Ministries.
Yes.
What compelled you to become part of this organization and become president, take a leadership position?
Well, Will is a very good friend of mine who was the former president prior to me being president.
Okay. And what's Will's last name in case someone knows?
Will Dow. His name is
Will Dow. Okay.
Phenomenal leader, phenomenal friend. And so around the time where I was still working with the juvenile department, I would volunteer with Behind Every Door because Behind Every Door was in the Village Oaks community, apartment community, and my church was maybe a mile from it. So I would volunteer, and that's actually how I started with Behind Every Door. I volunteered, and I volunteered for about 2-3 years actually before I actually became an employee. So Will on and off would ask me, "Hey Darrion, would you like to join the organization?" It was a couple of times I told him no, it just didn't feel right. Didn't feel like the timing was right. Didn't feel led. And then the third time, the opportunity was just right. And I took it and we talked. And he reminds me of this conversation a lot that, he said, "Man, if you give me a couple of years, I have some other thoughts." But I had no clue those thoughts were connected to a prayer that he had praying for. He had been praying for Joshua. He was praying for someone. He knew, gosh, my skill set's running out. I feel like I'm great at these other areas. I can go play up here and do some other things. And, but again, I had no clue he was praying for Joshua. I came along and 2 years later, started going up the trajectory of leadership just through training. And then right before, January 2020, unofficially, he handed me the organization and said, "Hey, okay, here you go. You have my support, but here you go." And then, COVID hit. And so what a journey, what a learning opportunity for that. And through that, and November 2020 was officially when I became president.
Well, congratulations. That's an impressive story. You must have really been, doing some good things too, as a dedicated volunteer, as a hardworking volunteer, because I take my volunteer position seriously and think everyone should, because you never know,
right?
Other than you giving back, it could lead to additional opportunities. You want to do everything with excellence. And I appreciate that he was praying. You were probably praying during that period before you accepted the position, and that he was praying for Joshua. We need to be praying for, when we're asking for help, praying for that, that Timothy, praying for that Joshua, praying for that Ruth, to come into our lives and help us, with what we're trying to do. You want enlarge your territories. You've got to enlarge your tribe with good people.
Correct. I wholeheartedly agree.
Hey, hallelujah. We got church up in here. Everywhere I go, I'm trying to be a representative. I tell people, if you don't want to hear about Jesus and God as part of my journey, you might want to talk to somebody else. Because
I promise you, we're right on. I'm good with it.
Kindred spirits. So How is you're part of the organization? You became president a couple of years ago. How are you working to make an impact in the community?
Well, pretty much. Well, what we do is we run community centers, and we build relationships, intentional relationships with people, get to know them in those communities, because a lot of our community centers are actually housed inside the actual apartment community. We actually have one that we're stepping into that we recently, we're finishing the purchase and officially closing on the 18th on the Cedar Crest location. We're purchasing the old Salvation Army Cedar Crest building, which is next to Good Haven and full of rich single family homes that make up this rich Cedar Crest community. So we're excited about that as well, and doing the renovations for it and getting it done through this year. But traditionally in our communities, we're housed in the center of apartment communities, and we go knock on doors, we go learn needs, and then we try to figure out ways to create spaces for transformation. But we don't use that word transformation loosely. I think it's really easy to say transformation, think these big things, but the reality is when you make it about people, about the people that we serve, it's the way we do it and the way we've been led is through these behavior shifts, right? Literally, if the Bible is the theory by which we measure behavior, then the way we see behavior change is through behavior shifts. It's these behavior shifts. A person starts one way, there's some particular level of intervention, and then that person changes. And that behavior, that one behavior that shifts, that one mindset that shifts, that one belief, that false belief, right? That dies, man, just changes the whole trajectory of a person's life in major ways. And the way in the church community we would talk about it is in strongholds that tend to take place. And then the way we talk about it in the therapeutic psychological world would say the behavior shifts, significant life events, trauma, different things but God created all of it, you know? And so with all of that, I mean, we're able to use our particular gift sets to help walk people to the change they want to see, not the ones that we want to see for them, but the change that they want to see. So
that's awesome. What about, in addition to the community centers, I think you have a conference that you do as well. Tell me about the conference. Yeah. So
BU conference is actually, it wasn't officially titled BU until about year 6. And so it's a conference for, that's been around for about, since 2014. COVID has not allowed me to necessarily do it in person. And I've had to necessarily readjust, but this conference has catered to many, like I would say over about 2,500 to 3,000 people in underserved neighborhoods. Now, my goal for this conference was 2 things. One, to help people have a space or a platform to identify what feels true to them. We deal with those truths with the word and to identify what's actually true. And then from there, you know, the person can go and be a better version of themselves because of it. And then the second thing is everyone can afford to go to MegaFest. Everyone can afford to go to the major big conferences.
Right. And you're referencing Bishop Jake's conference.
Yeah, I love Bishop. Amazing conferences. Right. But everybody can afford to.
Absolutely.
Pastors and leaders. Everybody can afford to, you know. So that said, I just felt led to try to bring that high level, you know, type of conference to the hood. Like, how can I bring it to people who can't afford it, but still get a lot of really good information that can help them where they are? And
now, is it just for men? Is it co-ed, or who attends?
It started out just for men. And I started it at my church at the time. And the women saw it and they was like, you just can't be
right. Equal opportunity, equal access, opportunity, equity, all of the E's.
Yes, ma'am. So what happened is we eventually just opened the doors for men and women. And then, that's when the things changed. My pastor was very supportive, all the way to the point where he told me, hey, man, this was amazing this year, but you can't be here next year. And I was like, what? What you mean, man? Like, I don't.
And let's go ahead and give Pastor name. Give him his
Pastor Sims, Pastor Jermaine Sims.
Okay.
And he was like, he said, no, you still have my support, but I feel led by the Lord to say you can't have it here anymore because of where you're going. Like, this thing is going to, and then I had the opportunity to work with Behind Every Door, got a community center, and transformed an entire gym into a conference space a couple times. And that gym was full. And so the church couldn't hold it, to be honest with you. So it was just God in so many ways, just doing what he do best through people. And it's just really important that we listen when those type of things happen, because they could very well be life.
And have people in your life, like your pastor, who speak life, who want more for you, who want to help you amplify what you're doing. If the people around you are negative, constantly, the sky is falling kind of people, pessimistic, that's you need people around you who will question you and challenge you, but you need people who are going to support you, especially when you're doing something good and impacting lives. If they're trying to detract you from that, you need to really look closely at who you're allowing into your space, because that can really change your course, and so it sounds like you've got a lot of really supportive, encouraging people around you, and I'm happy for you, because you need that. What you're doing some really hard, heavy lifting there, and you need people around you who are going to help you do that. So you've talked about it. You've referenced it a few times. The model, the behavior shift. It's almost a therapy model about choices and behavior shifts. And when we talked before, you kind of walked me through some steps of it. Can you quickly hit on that? And
so when you think about the work that we do,
let me jump in right quick and say to our listeners, I realize we're having a little audio issue. You're here a little lag occasionally, and we're working on that, but stay with us, because this is great information here with Darrion Lewis. Sorry about that, brother. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So just about that specifically in regards to the therapeutic route. Couple things you have, and it seems like there's a running theme today, is that everybody has a chance and a choice, right? You wake up with a chance and a choice, and that choice is really up to you, right? What do you do, right? So that gets us to behaviors, to the space of like, what behaviors am I, operating in? And then those behaviors in the context of what I've seen just over the course of my career is they're either risky behaviors or they're protective ones, right? Mm-hmm. And so the example I tend to use is my son, right? So my son, prior to I met my wife, my oldest son, his name is Chase. He's 14, about to be 15 next month. Wow, good night. But he'll be 15 next month. And I met Chase at 10. And I remember my wife telling me about times where they would go to the drive-thru, they will order, but Chase was really like, hey, is it okay if I order this and this? Like, is it okay if I order this meal and a shake? Like, will we be okay? If that's all right? Of course she would, get this, do it. But he was just,
and get an apple pie too at that point.
Oh no,
because we got in our feelings now.
So now, he felt, and let's break that down. At some level, he felt like there was a risk financially, that if I ordered too much, that we may be at risk financially. He shared that with his mom, right? So fast forward to today, God has just been he's definitely favored us in a way. If we wanted to go to a drive-thru, he could order. Obviously, he orders everything now.
Right.
But he doesn't even hesitate. He doesn't even ask that question. Like, he just orders, right?
He feels secure. He feels
secure. He feels protected, right? Take the kid that lives in Roseland, that lives under public housing, that family. He witnesses his mom have to make life choices, or do I buy bleach, or do I buy, do I buy food? Do I buy the stuff to wash our clothes, or do I buy the food so that we can eat? So I'd rather be stinky or not, or just have dirty clothes and eat versus not eating and then have clean clothes, right. Which leads to, and even in some of these conversations with the young men I get to work with, is, hey man, like, I don't like seeing my mama like that. And I feel that. I grew up in Pleasant Grove. My mom wanted her independence at some level.
And I just want to interject. You're naming a lot of communities, and we've got listeners from all over. So
I'm sorry.
Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, Dallas, Texas.
Right.
Sorry. Yes.
Right. Don't be sorry. I just like to clarify anything for people who might not be familiar. I want to put them there. I'm a writer, so I want to
put them there. Put them in the scene. Okay, so I feel exactly where they're at. Mm-hmm. I witnessed my mom turn a can of peaches and some biscuits into a dinner.
Ooh. Black girl magic.
Right. Because that's all we had, Right. And I saw my mom not eat sometimes just to ensure that me and my sister was eating, and that hurt, which if you don't have anybody speaking into your life, it'll make you result into some riskier behaviors. Those riskier behaviors feel more worth it when you feel like, at the very least, I might be bringing something home that can help my mom so yeah, we didn't get the bleach, but I went back and I stole the bleach. Mm-hmm. And then that one time I was really just trying to help my mom get some stuff so we can wash our clothes. Well, that's the time I get caught. That's the time where I catch a case. And then next thing you know, I'm going down the track of the system, Right. So it's the work when we talk about risk and protective factors and the therapy that comes along with that, right? We try to look and find ways that's where our kids are. Like, do they have a trusted adult in their lives? Right. Do they have, how do they feel about school? How do they feel about employment? Do they have something that they can go to after school?
And their healthcare as well.
Their healthcare,
the impact of that, right?
The impact of that. How do we build trust there in the American community? Like it's just a ton that comes along with it, but it all starts with how we think about it. What the story we tell ourselves about these particular things that then in turn leads to how I respond to particular situations, particular matters. And
that's deep. That's deep. Because when we talked originally, you put it in terms of like feels true.
Yes. And that's connected to the story we tell ourselves.
Right. Actually true. And yeah.
It's what feels true, what's actually, and a lot of times what feels true is something, a lot of times not what's actually true,
Right.
But it's having to say, hey, look, here's what's actually true. And here's what's true about what you feel. And even it's another thing I would throw in there. It's intention versus impact, right? It's saying, hey, like example, like Mr. Lewis, I didn't like you raised your voice at me. You got real passionate when you had this conversation at me. I didn't hear nothing you said. Well, intention, that wasn't my intention, right? My intention was to help you, right? But I can't help the fact how it impacted you, Mm-hmm. So now, okay, let me adjust. Let me actually adjust my tone. Let me adjust my mood. Let me adjust how I speak to you so that when I speak to you, you hear what I'm saying.
Right. Emotion clouds reason. And we can have a response that's, angry, but we don't want an angry reaction,
Yes.
So it's, and that's a lesson that's hard to learn when you come from an environment where people are, very vocal, very aggressive, a lot of profanity. I had that in my childhood. That was how people reacted to conflict and frustration. So I had to unlearn that as a way of communicating with other people when I'm angry. I mean, I literally had to unlearn that as an adult because that was what I knew. And it injures people and it injures relationships.
Yeah, that's so good. The process of unlearning is something that we all have to endure, especially from season to season, because different seasons bring different things out of you.
Yes.
God is calling you into different things in different seasons that then in turn leads to, hey, look, hey, I can't think the way that I once did and be successful this season, right?
And then that's the thing, and be successful in this new season, because
right.
It just injures me when I hear people say that's just the way I am. As if you can't, it's impossible to change. That's the way you choose to be. And when you see that that is wreaking havoc in every area of your life, personal, professional relationships, just you're not able to impact people positively and just carrying all that around because you just choose to stay stuck in a toxic pattern of behavior. Man, I just that's for sure real. And I think one of the things that I think that we could be better at is acknowledging that, and even the areas in ourselves introspectively to say, hey, look, the area, what am I trying to get people to accept? Right. It's kind of like overcoming that sense of accept me for me, type thing. Always being willing to learn and grow, and replacing that with that. Wow. That's powerful. But the feels true and actually true. I felt that. I always look for my tweetable moment, and there've been a lot here, but that one in particular, that really resonates with me.
It just teaches you how to process. I'm sorry.
Sure.
It's a way to get into process, and it's helped me unlearn some things. And it actually even detach from some things that even has impacted me from a trauma perspective that's limited me. Yeah. Because I always have to ask myself, hey, what feels true? Okay, let me deal with that. Okay, now what's actually true?
Yes.
About what I'm feeling.
Good questions to ask yourself. Big on introspection and how can I be better? And if we spend a little more time on that, a little less time judging other people, I think the world would be a lot better place. But I digress. Let's get back to our at-risk youth, underserved communities. One of the terms we hear frequently in social services is at-risk youth. And I think everyone knows what that means. But as I look at the news, or what it was intended to mean, the little group, the demographics, it was intended to reflect. But as I look at the news around the nation, from school shootings to online bullying, there are no boundaries, there are no zip codes to that. And so I'm wondering, aren't all youth at risk now?
Yeah. It depends on how we define at risk. Is it from you can look at it two ways. You can look at it from the actual behaviors that one could potentially display. And then you can also look at the behaviors that can be inflicted on a kid just as a result of just trying to go to school, as a result of just trying to walk down the neighborhood. But everyone, I would say a lot of our kids are at risk. And then I know it's typically used in the social services realm a lot. We've intentionally chose not to use it. We've chose to use under-resourced instead, because what we're seeing is that a lot of our kids, when you approach them with at risk, and much like I didn't know that I was living in poverty. I didn't know that. I thought it was normal to go borrow some sugar from your neighbor. I thought that was just a part of the community culture. I had no clue until I actually became an adult or went off to college and started seeing things different, that life was actually different than how I grew up. Right. So all in all, a lot of our kids feel like they don't have access. Like Roseland, and I bring up Roseland. Roseland is located in uptown Dallas, which is from the Census Bureau, said that the average income is at least between $52,000 to $60,000 a year. But it doesn't account for this project, right? Which is actually the oldest project west of the Mississippi River in 1942, right? All that to be said, where these individuals, the average income is between $11,000 and $13,000 a year. And so it's different, right? Right. But everything around it, kids, when you begin to talk with them, the richest group is right across the highway, but a kid feels like, I can't walk up in there. Like, why, if I walk up in there, I'll be a threat, And The reality is they just don't know anyone in there, but we know someone in there. We actually have someone on our board that works there.
But to challenge that, there are people who would perceive them as a threat. That I don't think that's actually not true. Because
exactly. Now that actually is true, right?
Right.
But what I guess in essence, what I'm trying to get to is the relational equity that can be established to where the threat is shut down, because if I walk in if I work there per se, right? And I brought that kid in versus if that kid comes in by themselves, right? Is two different, different responses,
Yeah. Even as it makes me think about, you talked about the young man and wearing a suit, which is a lesson in how appearance, whether you like it or not, can make a difference in how people perceive you. But we know that statistically, young men, young women who go to court with a parent will get, different results quite often than those who don't have a guardian or someone representing them. So that person with you, that leadership or guardian or mentor can make a difference in a lot of areas.
Absolutely. And to create relationships for kids with people like that can have positive impacts in their lives, man, it's just huge, and that it's bigger. I've seen the light in a kid's eye, in a young man's eye, young woman's eyes go off when just light up brighter, when they felt connected to the right person, when they felt like they had a network of people that they can call on. Because a lot of times our kids don't want to ask their parents or ask anybody because they feel like they don't want to be a burden, So again, that's another thing that can lead to a risky behavior. And the way you try to get in front of that and help protect this kid is by equipping this kid with relationships, equipping this kid. And it's not just one-off relationships. This is, intentional connections. So
right. And it's so important, to get messages like this out there. And I love that you're giving me background, the thought process, the history that leads to these behaviors, because so many people see the behaviors, but they never really look into, what motivated that, what prompted that, what was the nature, the nurture, why they made those choices. And this, conversations like this ongoing can help us all, better understand how people are being impacted and why they're making what we would perceive as poor choices. So you've talked about what you're doing in the community. You're working with men, you're working with women, you're working with young people. And I love it. I see the light in your eyes grow brighter. This will be audio, but you and I are on video as we're talking, and you definitely have a passion and a heart for what you're doing. But I know you also have your own family. You have a wife and 2 sons, right?
Yes.
I want to know, what would you tell your sons are 2 or 3 important character traits that they must develop to be successful partners, fathers, community leaders?
Always follow through. That'll be one thing I would say. If you start it, finish it. That was, something really key that my mom, my grandparents, everybody instilled in me. Like, no, you're not quitting, and it was just so much I learned in that. I think another thing I would say is always take the position of the learner. You're always learning. Yeah. Never stop learning. Read what you can, read all you can, continue to educate yourself. And even if you feel like you're in rooms bigger than you or anything like that, don't be afraid of it. Take it as opportunities to grow, to evolve, right?
Right.
And then don't rush the process, but trust it.
All right.
That's probably the last one, because I do believe that thing that I'm operating in now, if I self-reflected, there is something that the Lord did to prepare me for where I'm at now.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, those are some lucky boys, because those are some tried and true, tested, absolutely wonderful, wonderful characteristics that you want. I mean, not just as a father, but in every position. I love that follow through. That's one of my pet peeves is, people starting things and dropping the ball. But hey, that's a whole nother show. We'll have to do it another time. What do you guys need now at your nonprofit? If somebody's listening, they want to collab with you, they can help. What is something you need?
So we always need one of our focus. We have a ton of focuses, but literacy is one of them. And on average, based off of some of the research we've done from our work, is that our kids are reading on average about 2 to 3 grade levels behind. Mm-hmm. And so we're doing our due diligence to help catch them up. But what we've noticed is we need that it's one-on-one intentional work, and we volunteers is always welcome. I know we're in a tricky season right now, but volunteers are always welcomed. In addition to that, I would ask for, prayers, because we're stepping into something that's very, very new in regards to organization, purchasing our own building. And then we're finishing up a capital campaign where we started during the pandemic out to raise about $8.5 million.
That's ambitious. You saw my face. I was like, during the pandemic, I love your faith. I love your faith. That's real.
So out of it, we're only $500,000 away. We're always welcoming. We have an amazing initiative that we're doing. We're going to really put something in the Cedar Crest, which is another some would consider impoverished neighborhood. We're going to put something in the backyard that's amazing.
That's amazing. Now, please let me know when you break ground, open, whatever you need to do. I want to witness that. And to be clear, you are a 501c3 because that's
correct. Yes. Behind Every Door is 501c3. Yes. And you can visit us at behindeverydoor.org.
Okay. That's what I was trying to get to is to make sure they knew how to find Darrion Lewis. Behindeverydoor.org. We'll drop that in the show notes. And I just so appreciate you coming onto the program. This episode is fire. I've learned a lot. I learned a lot from our guests. That's the main reason I do this show is because there's so many fascinating people like you out there doing positive, powerful things. Continued success to you and your ministry. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Wow, what an interview. I'm so excited about Darrion Lewis and Behind Every Door Ministries. And I'm excited about you too. Thank you for joining Perpetual Motion with Dr. Mo Anderson. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, comment, and learn more about me on my website, drmoanderson.com. That's DRMOE Anderson.com. You can read book excerpts, watch videos, learn about the services I offer. I do speaker coaching, I do publishing coaching, and wellness coaching. You can also book me for a speaking engagement. I'd love to come and talk to your group virtually or in person. Really would like to work with you and yours and really appreciate your time. Until we meet again, renew, review, and renew. Thank you.